All right, while the turkey's cooking, let's look into the giblet bag and see what's in it. A lot of people use the neck and the giblets to make gravy. So it looks like what we have here is a little bit of the gizzard and liver. So gizzard we could use to make gravy, and the turkey neck. Liver we won't use because liver tends to get bitter and might impart a bitter flavor to the gravy. So what I'll do is clean this and chop it up, and then for the turkey neck I'll also just break it into smaller pieces so it's easier to manage and brown. So just basically just break it up into manageable pieces, and then we'll start browning and making gravy with it. The idea of browning is that browning creates flavor, and flavor equals delicious gravy. All right, we're going to take the giblets and the neck and some of the skin and do gravy. So the idea of a gravy with the giblets is you're going to make a broth first. I'll just add a little oil just so the the giblets have some oil to brown. So since we're not really going to eat this, I'm going to try to brown aggressively. Or the browner the little bits, the more flavor you'll get in there. So I'll start by browning. I'll add some salt, because I think adding a little salt at the beginning helps with the flavor too. Just a light sprinkle. I'd say that's probably a quarter teaspoon to probably a quarter teaspoon of kosher salt. And I'm just gonna turn this on medium high and brown. All right, for the this turkey gravy, you can see the brown bits are on the bottom, and some of the turkey is actually browning really nicely. Next, I'm just going to add some chopped parsley and chopped celery, green onion, and flavoring components of the gravy. Sometimes it helps to pre-chop stuff ahead of time, especially when you're having like a big holiday meal. It's good to prep stuff ahead of time. The root vegetables, or these vegetables, will help to glaze the pan a little. Next, I'll add water. This is about 2 cups of water. I'll let this come to a boil and taste, and then I'll add some bouillon cube as needed. Some chicken bouillon. But if you're able to get a nice aggressive browning without burning, the tasty brown bits on the bottom of the pan will add a lot of flavor, so you could reduce the amount of bouillon you add. I should add some pepper. Pepper's always good. Just a light sprinkle. And I've already added salt. Again, like I said before, you could add other herbs and spices if you like. So I'll turn that down and let it simmer a little. These bones have been simmering for about 5 minutes, just enough to get the fond off the bottom. Now I'm gonna give it a quick taste to see if there's any, if I need to add bouillon or not. I'm sure I will. I'll give it a quick taste. You could taste the turkey and the onions and celery. needs more salt, but for the salt I'll just add bouillon cubes. So the idea of a gravy is you you're essentially thickening up a flavorful broth, and if it gets over salted you could add more liquid before you do the final thickness. So there's 1 cube, I think I'll add 2, and just let that melt in. So I'll just cover and let the bouillon cubes dissolve, and that should be the broth. All right, here's the pan juices from the turkey, and now we're gonna make gravy or a flavorful broth. So what I'm gonna do is take this broth I made earlier with the turkey neck and gizzards and skin. I'll just add it here, and then I'll add it to the oven for a few minutes just to deglaze, get these crispy bits off the bottom of the pan. So the oven's still at 425. We're going to lift off these brown bits off the foil and add more flavor to this juice, and we'll strain it out afterwards. So into the oven, 425 for about 5 minutes. Here are the concentrated juices from baking and the roasting, from the broth. Let me give it a quick taste. There's a layer of fat, but we'll defat that in a bit. Okay, this is nice and savory, a little on the salty side, so you could cut it with water to dilute it down to however salty, to the saltiness level that you'd like. So this is the basis for our gravy. All right, I've added the strained turkey juices to a gravy separator, and for Thanksgiving you could either just serve the turkey with the natural juices like a au jus, but most people are used to making a gravy with flour, so I'll make that today, and I'll show you the process of doing that. And also I want to show a gluten-free, low-carb method of making gravy using xanthan gum. All right, one of the first steps we want to do is separate the juices from the gravy. So with a fat separator, it makes it easy, or if not, you could use a spoon and spoon off the fat from the juices. And so this makes it pretty straightforward. One thing we're going to do is we're going to reserve the fat. We're not going to get rid of it because there's a lot of flavor from the turkey and from the vegetables that we roasted. So this is mainly butter and some turkey fat. All right, with the fat separated, we ended up with the cup of concentrated turkey juices. So I'm going to add stock to this to make gravy. All right, for the traditional flour gravy, I supplemented the au jus with some unsalted bone broth. So what I would use for 2 cups, this is 2 cups of liquid. You usually use 2 tablespoons of flour for every cup. So this is 4 tablespoons of flour. And with the fat, I'm going to use pretty much a 1-to-1. So this is just about 4 tablespoons of fat, including a little butter to supplement. So one thing about using a flour, you have to cook the flour. If not, it's going to taste pasty. So that's why most people do a roux, and salt and pepper to taste. And for gravies, I tend to like a little more pepper than usual, but salt and pepper to taste. All right, for cooking the roux, I'm heating up the fat, and cooking the flour only takes about a minute or two, depends on how dark you like the gravy. So the fat is melted. There's still a little liquid from the straining of the broth, but I think that'd be okay. So basically, if you add flour directly to hot liquid, it will start to clump. By making a roux, you cook the gravy or cook the flour, and at the same time it adds it coats the flour granules with fat, so when you start adding the liquid, it's not gonna clump as easily. So basically, you cook the flour for a minute or two. You could cook it until it's darker. They have different types of colors for the roux. Sometimes in Cajun cooking, there's a blonde roux, and for gumbo, you cook it really dark, almost black, and that caramelizes the flour, so it adds additional flavor. All right, there's some browning on the flour. I don't know if you could tell or not. You could see it caramelizing a little. I turned down the heat, so when you add the liquid, it doesn't clump immediately. So generally you add off the heat, but I'm going to continue on. So add the liquid slowly and whisk. I'm making sure the flour and water is incorporating, so I don't leave a lot of big lumps, and then once everything sort of gets to a uniform mixture, I'll dump everything to get all the liquid into the mix. One thing about flour gravy, it will thicken the longer you cook it. So the advantage there is if it comes out too thin, as you cook it, it will continue thickening. So now I think that's enough, and I'll just add the rest of the 2 cups of liquid and just let it come to a boil and continue stirring. Right now I turned the heat to low. As I continue stirring, I'm going to increase the temperature so it comes to boil quicker, but at least on low it won't clump up as quickly. And one thing you could do if there are lumps is to strain it before you put it in a gravy boat. Now I'm increasing the temperature back to medium and just continue whisking. Until it comes to a boil, and then you could turn it down and simmer as much as you need to thicken as you need. So everything's come to a boil. Let me give it a quick taste. Here's the consistency. So that's a nice thick without being too thick consistency. Let me cool this off a little. I think it needs a little more pepper and just a little salt, just a little more salt, and that's it. So everything's come to a boil. Turn off the heat. The gravy is done. All right, now with the finished gravy, I'll just add it to a gravy boat. Again, if it's lumpy, you could strain before adding the gravy boat, but it looked pretty good. So gravy number 1, conventional flour gravy, is done. All right, I'm gonna do a gluten-free, low-carb gravy using xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is a pretty cool thickener. You just need a little bit. This is a half a teaspoon. This is 2 cups of the broth. The advantage of xanthan gum is that it could thicken at any temperature. So if I were to mix this and add to the broth, it will thicken over time in about 5-10 minutes. And it's gluten-free. And it stays consistent, so if you heat it up, it will stay the same thickness as it cools down. Unlike flour gravy, it will start to, as it cools down, it will kind of form a thick paste. But once you heat it up again with flour gravy, it will melt. But with xanthan gum, it will continue staying the same viscosity. So what I'll do, even though it will thicken anyway, we want warm gravy or hot gravy. So I'm going to bring this to a boil. And with the xanthan gum, I've seen a lot of recipes. They suggest making a slurry by mixing in hot water. But I think with xanthan gum, the best way to approach xanthan gum is to use oil. And oil will help dissolve the xanthan gum easily. There's a little bit of the broth on the bottom of this, so hopefully that doesn't mess us up, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So I'll let the broth come to a boil. Actually, you don't need to. I'll just add it now and just whisk it in. And of course, you just, as with flour, you want to whisk to make sure the lumps are taken care of. But in theory, once I whisk this completely, you don't need to really heat and it will thicken, but we want warm gravy or hot gravy. All right, the mixture has come to a boil. I'm going to just turn it off, just mix, and then I'll set aside. All right, here's the gluten-free gravy with xanthan gum. I don't have any more gravy boats, but I'll use a bowl to hold the gravy. And now this is a fine mesh strainer. I'm just showing that you could use it for flour gravy or xanthan gum gravy if you have lumps. But what I'll do is just pour this through. All right, here are the final results of the two gravies. This is the flour gravy. As you see, it's been sitting in here for a few minutes and it's starting to thicken even more. So what I'll do is spoon a little on the turkey. Has nice consistency. Then I'll spoon a little of the gluten-free gravy. It's a little smoother, but that's okay. It's almost like a cornstarch gravy where it's clear, but it has a nice thickness to it. So let's give it a try. Using my hands. That's good. Has the nice traditional flavors. You could taste a little bit of the butter and the um, turkey fat. And here's the gluten-free turkey. That's nice too. I think both are pretty easy to make. This one takes a little more time with the flour. You have to cook the flour and then slowly add the liquid so it doesn't clump. With the gluten-free Xanthan Gum gravy, thickness depends on how much xanthan gum you use, but a little goes a long way. I was able to get a decent thickness out of it compared to the traditional gravy, but this is, like I said, when it sits a little longer, it thickens up. So if I were to heat this, it'll be a little more liquidy, but overall both are good results, and it's a good way to get gravy. So you have the traditional method and the gluten-free method, low carb method using xanthan gum. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, and hopefully this gives you ideas on how to do gravy. All right, here's the gravy left over after 2 hours. You notice the flour gravy has really gotten thick and kind of can hold its shape, but once you heat it up, it will become gravy again. And notice the xanthan gum gravy is remaining the same consistency. If you use cornstarch, cornstarch gravy will eventually gel like this also. So it looks like xanthan gum has some neat properties.